Oh, today on returning, I have invited my friend Rachel Ashwell to join me, and you're in for a treat. I have admired Rachel's work for over a decade now. She was always on my Pinterest mood board, all of her creations. She's, as well as being a prolific author, entrepreneur, businesswoman. She is an incredible creative, and she's a creator of Shabby Chic, which is a whole brand, a whole thing in itself. Yeah, my favorite blanket is a Shabby Chic blanket. My bed is even a Rachel Ashwell Shabby Chic bed, and yeah, her aesthetics are absolutely divine, really gorgeous, blush pinks and pastels, and yeah, just really romantic. And so, yeah, if you are a lover of beauty, you're going to love this conversation and love all the things that Rachel creates. All right, welcome, Rachel. So good to
Yeah,
speak
thank
to
you.
you. Last
Thank
time we
you.
were here, you came over with the most gorgeous dahlias, and
Oh, yes. I hope they
so lovely.
lasted.
They did. They're so gorgeous. The perfect shade of, like, it was
Yes.
like a apricot color. And
Yes.
yeah, I feel like we could probably just talk for about 30 minutes on
Flowers.
flowers and shades of pastel.
It would be nice. That would be easy.
Oh, love it, love it.
Yeah.
So I would love to talk to you today about just your creative process, and I guess, like, do you see beauty as like a way of life, as like a spiritual practice? What does beauty mean to you?
Well, firstly, I feel beauty needs a stage.
Mm,
I feel that it needs to, we've got our five senses, and so I really pay attention to the scent. I pay attention to the lighting. I pay attention to the music, so that the visual has kind of a really lovely stage. I'm so freaking sensitive to all those things. If the scent is, for whatever reason, not pleasing, or if if I go into a restaurant and the music's loud, or I find there's a lot of unconscious living these days where there's a lot of activity, a lot of stimulation. And I often think, who's that even for? Is it just like on autopilot that we just have to fill space? And so for me to even see beauty, I need everything to kind of, if possible, to support that. So for me, beauty is about being mindful and having meaning. It's interesting because living between two places as I do, Los Angeles and Somerset, I have these two homes. And I love nothing. It's funny, I was at my daughter's house last night, and, obviously my homes are bigger, so I have good storage and all that type of stuff. But still, I love to be able to open a drawer and whatever's in there, whether it's functional, practical, or beautiful, whatever it might be, that I know that it's in there, for one, and two, that it has a purpose. And again, that to me is all about having at my fingertips, function aside, beautiful things. Like, I know when I go into my linen cupboard, or I go into my little prop cupboard of vases, or those types of things, I'm intimately um I'm intimately connected with every single piece. And you can kind of take that philosophically into your relationships and into everything you do. So I think for me, beauty is really about being conscious of what that beauty is for you. And if it doesn't hold that, it probably isn't serving you anymore, and you can let it go. So I'm quite philosophical. I mean, I'm sitting because I'm moving around because of the leaf blower, but I'm currently sitting in my living room in Los Angeles. And again, I probably spend a third of my time in Los Angeles now, and when I'm not here, I rent the house out. So I want the house to feel beautiful and comfortable and functional, but because it's a rental sometimes, I want to make sure it doesn't have layers of my personal kind of energy. I just want beautiful energy. And so as we speak, I'm looking around my room and there's candlesticks and there's art and there's a chandelier. And of course, there's a few Christmas things up now and pillows. And it's all very considered. And so I think that's what my type of design is about, is where your eyes rest and where your energy connects. There really is nothing that feels unconscious. I'm very aware. I don't have little kids running around with, red buses and trucks and dolls, and I'm at a different stage of my life. And I do believe that when you have little kids or teenagers, they need to have a sense of freedom of play. So it's not like, you stuff everything in boxes and, they don't have that ability for expression. And in fact, it was when my son was 6 months old and Lily was just a bit over two that I actually even created Shabby Chic because I thought, I don't want to be this neurotic mother for the next X amount of years, that the kids don't feel that they can play and make forts and bump into things. But I also don't want my house to be upside down for X amount of years. So I'm very aware of making sure that the choices of beauty and the choices of what you're bringing into your home supports the function of your home. Again, I was up at Lily's yesterday and, she has so much going on. She has one room that's all about her altar and her prayer. And then she's got her art studio. And then she's got, all her beautiful clothing. I mean, she has a lot of different activities going on in her house. And it's how to allow one to have a full life and to have the tools that are whatever needed to support those interests, but for it not to be just this chaos of, you know, everything, because then the peace and the groundedness doesn't have a place to settle, and then it's hard to do any of those functions.
Totally.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And tell me with you, because you started as a stylist, am I right?
Yes, so I left school very young, just shy of 16, and I jumped into, well, actually, my very first job. I was always interested in the movie industry, and so in London, I managed to get a job as a ticket counter for Warner Brothers. I thought, okay, well, that's something
Amazing.
for the film industry. But gradually, yes, from 16 to 19, I graduated into doing styling, largely for commercials when I was still living in England at that very young age. And then when I moved to Los Angeles at 19, I got pretty set in with doing styling for commercials. I luckily that was during the time where there were massive budgets for commercials, and somehow I got into the groove of doing commercials with period costumes. That was just seems to
Hmm.
be my little speciality. I did that until basically my kids were born, and then but what I learned from that was kind of how to storytell,
Mm.
and whether it was through costumes or through the materials. And by the way, my parents were flea market people too. So I also
Hmm.
learned from a very young age how to navigate a flea market, their envelopes of their money and quick thinking. And if you want it, you better buy
Mm.
it because there's no more and all that.
Mm.
So when my kids were little or teeny, just newly born really with Jake, I I thought, okay, well, I don't want this massive job. I want to be able to be with my kids. And so I thought I'm just going to open a little shop in Santa Monica, California. And it just, I guess this was back in the day where, I mean, I was still pretty young. I wasn't 30. And it was back in the day where um, when you launch something, there was a bit more authenticity about it versus kind of a plan and filling in the dots of, budgets and all that type of stuff. So it was a very authentic store when I opened it. It was like, well, I've got these little babies and this is what I want to offer to the public. And it just exploded. It exploded. I mean, every celebrity, from Madonna to Gwyneth Paltrow to Bruce Springsteen to Julia Roberts to, you name it, they all fell upon my store.
Wow, amazing. And
Yeah.
did you like was there like a moment where you had a vision of what you were creating, or were you just literally like doing the next thing, the next step?
Well, I mean, what my vision was, being a young mother of young babies,
Yeah.
is I wanted to create this world of people being able to walk in this store and imagine that this could be their home. So I
Mm,
checked all the boxes: sofas, lighting, rugs, bedding, candles, the whole vision. Again, at the time, still am, great fan of Enya. So Enya music was playing, and the fragrance of the candles were very subtle. And so it was a whole experience. And up
mm.
until then, if somebody wanted to put their house together, they either needed an interior decorator because they just didn't know how to put all the pieces together, or they needed to, kind of gather all these things themselves. But it's hard when you don't have a roadmap. So,
Totally. I totally agree. That's how I found your work actually. Was I was living in Notting Hill, and your the little store you had
yeah,
there, which is
yeah,
so beautiful. Oh my God. I would
yeah,
go in there and I'd be like, wow. Like,
uh-huh,
and I couldn't put my finger on. I could say what it is now, but there was this vibration of harmony and
yeah,
beauty, and
yeah.
just everything was just right. Like it was like impeccable energy and
Impeccable
aesthetics and all of
imperfection.
that.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny.
And
I once had this guy, an investor or somebody, because I always say the beauty of imperfection. He said, yes,
mm.
Rachel, but your imperfection has to be perfect.
Yes, that's exactly it. It's like
Yeah,
the other day I did it was about 6 months ago. I did this video. I'm a Virgo. I know you're Scorpio. I'm Scorpio
yeah,
rising. So there's
yeah,
something about the combo of the Virgo and Scorpio, maybe. I don't know. But I did this video saying I've got this theory about Virgos. I actually think that a lot of Virgos are actually really messy. We just have a certain order, and then things get too messy, and then we have to kind of pull it together and make it perfect. And then my
yeah.
astrologer friend, who she's like a very well-known astrologer, she's like, yeah, but it would take a Virgo to think that that's messy. And I'm
Yeah,
like, yeah, that's so true. Oh my
yeah,
God.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
God. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
and so
yes.
are you a really tidy, neat freak, or are you messy,
No,
like to
I
be in
think
control?
I think I'm tidy for sure. But again, I have a lot going on as far as,
Mm,
obviously I've got my work, and that's messy in as much as, samples come, fabric swatches come,
mm,
right? Samples, whatever. It got tons of photo shoots. So there is definitely, it's not like I live in a perfect box that nothing can be moved, but because there's order of what's there, um, everything has a home, and because everything's beautiful. For example, I have that program with Next in England, and
mm,
the retailer, and they come to my house a couple of times a year for 2 weeks, and all of my bedrooms are turned upside down for that period of time because we're shooting bedding or lighting, whatever. But because everything is beautiful, even an unmade bed or even a pile of china that's sitting on the table that needs to be shot or not, because everything's beautiful, it's a beautiful mess, if that makes sense.
I totally get it. I
Yeah.
totally get it.
So,
Yes.
when my house is upside down, I'm not like, oh my God, what am I going to do? It's like, it's still everything you see in that beautiful mess is beautiful. So it's okay.
Mm,
So it's okay.
totally. I
Yeah.
love it. And as like you're a prolific businesswoman, you have created so much through your career.
Hmm.
Um, Tell me, like, how do you find the balance between like being the creative and the one at the antique markets, with your hands in the soil, making your dahlias, versus like the business side of things? Like, do you like enjoy both, or do you find it difficult? Like, where do you sit with that?
Well, that's a good question, and I don't have the code. I haven't broken the code on that. My company this year is 36 years old,
Hmm.
so I've been doing this a long time, and I've
Yeah.
been massive.
Mm.
I've for a single founder owner, I've had 15 stores globally, from Japan to England to LA, licensing deals, TV shows, books, done all that. Had investors, been bankrupt, not personally, but my company. Um, so I have, I've had 200 people work for me. I'm now down to seven. So I've done it all.
Yeah.
And when I look back, as one does, as one gets older, and you want to hope that you've learned some lessons and that the next decisions you make will be better based on your knowledge, um, is that I have anxiety. And I do find that balance of being fiscally responsible. I
Mm.
could sit and design a fabric. I don't know whether you know much know about fabric design, but for every color,
Hmm.
it's what you call a screen. Obviously, the more screens, more expensive it is to print it. I could design a print that has 36 shades of pink in it, but that's not fiscally responsible because then that means that print's going to cost whatever. So I feel what has eluded me, which is why I've had this extended time back in Los Angeles, because I think I might have cracked the code, is I have actually not had the best picker of that business support. I
Mm.
tend to gravitate to other creative people, so it's
Mm.
like this fun thing, but actually that's then the missing piece. You can both be the creative. And so that's where when my company has been fragile, let's call it, is because I haven't what's the word, prioritized having that business side. Now, I am fairly literate with understanding cash flow and inventory and taxes, of course, and all of that. So it's not like I barrel through life and my business with not an awareness of that. But because I have anxiety, it does
Mm.
penetrate when I'm in that creative zone. If I'm also thinking, do we have enough money for payroll? Do we have enough money to buy this fabric, whatever it might be? So it has been difficult for me. And I think, shabby chic is globally famous. Anyone in the home decorating lane, you'd be hard pressed not to find someone, whether they know it's a brand, whether they refer to it just as whatever. But um, the actual size of my company is so much smaller than its awareness.
Mm.
And I think that
Mm.
has had something to do with my lack of being able to understand that, or have the right support for that other piece, which again I think is the beauty and the curse. When I started Shabby Chic, I had absolutely no, other than being a flea market girl, I had no frame of reference. It's not like I was a fabric designer. It wasn't like I was a business person. It wasn't like I was anything. So I've had to learn every single one of those things through experience, which can be costly and take a bit longer time. But I also think if I had gone to school for any one of those things, it probably would have dulled my passion. And
Yes.
because so often, yeah, and I'm not saying don't go to school. I think studying is great, but sometimes it can overwhelm you and make you like frozen of where do I even begin? Whereas I just
Mm.
jumped in, and by jumping in, yeah, I failed a lot, but I also had some successes.
Mm. I so hear what you're saying. Yeah, I obviously don't have as much business experience as you do, but I definitely feel like I'm constantly pulled either way of, like, I can do the business side of things, but I know it's not my gift. Like it's but then, and then I've tried it various different times because that's what they say to do, scale and all of that. But I feel like the magic kind of goes.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, yeah, there's a decision I'm making at the moment to kind of shift that up a little bit. And
Hmm.
we'll see if it actually what's actually possible. But yeah, it's, I liken it to, it's like the mystic and the machine, which is, I guess, like the artist and producing, like
Yeah,
creating versus producing. And
yeah,
like in our world, like it's amazing that we get to have reach and do all of that, but at what
mhm,
cost, you know?
yeah, yeah,
And it's that thing where the magic actually comes. I know for me, it's when I'm not at my desk. I'm not like trying to even solve a problem. I'm just literally in flow with life, and
yeah,
that's where the creativity comes. And so, oh
yeah,
gosh,
yeah.
yeah.
I
And
mean, I
like,
think
what you
I think
go?
it's I think it's quite nice when you are a creative to have a knowledge um, of what it takes to um, translate your creativity into something that is commercial.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether it's commercial that people want to own it or whether it's commercial
Mm.
that profitability. So I actually I quite like the analytics of looking back. Like I just had a call now with one of my licensed partners, and we were looking back at 2024, what sold well, what didn't sell well, planning for 2025. I quite like having the data so that I am then designing into something that has information so that I feel there's a good chance of success. But in saying that, over data and over knowledge can also stifle your magic because, for example, it's, you know the palette of shabby chic. You know what I do. It's romantic, it's vintage, it's pastels, whatever. You know, there have been within those 36 years times where black and orange was the focus, and industrial was the focus. If I spent too much time thinking how can I make shabby chic industrial and black and orange, I would have lost my way. So I think
Right.
it's just finding that balance of being aware, understanding business, but keeping your own integrity and like the police, if you like, your own policeman of
Mm.
of feeling confident that yeah, all this other styles and trends are going on, but there's still a relevancy to my little song here.
Mm. Mm. And what advice would you give yourself, like, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, if you were to do it now?
It's about the team. It's about the
Mm.
team. It's about, I come from a tiny, not particularly functioning family. And I think for me, building the company the way I did without the intention of building it, it just kind of added, added, added. I think I was always looking for those warm relationships, family. I mean, for many years we called it the shabby family. And yes, you want your company, because you spend so much time in it, to be cozy and kind and all of that. But business is still business. And I think I would have, if I could tell my former self, is don't go looking in your business for those warm, fuzzy relationships.
Mm.
It's a separate, let it be expansive, let it be productive, let it be healthy, let it be kind, but it's business. And so make sure that you find that support, whether it's one person or a team, that you have that type of healthy relationship and find your warm and fuzzies elsewhere.
Mm. Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
My gosh.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you definitely don't know you're doing it when you're doing it, and then you realize,
No,
oh my God, what am I we doing?
yeah, yeah. And it also blurs lines as well. And, especially if you're a leader and the burden and the successes fall on your shoulders.
Yeah.
Maybe one year you're
Yeah.
making tons of money and because you're warm and fuzzy, you give it to everybody, or maybe one year not
Mm.
making any money and then you're angry with everybody. It's like
Yeah.
cleaner lines of what
Yeah.
what support is needed and always with kindness and respect, but
Yeah.
you don't need your warm and fuzzy in your business.
Yeah, I understand that. And with you, so you moved over to LA when you were 19. Was that like, did you have like a call to go to Hollywood, or what was it that called you there?
I was interested in film. Again, all I'd done is
Mm.
work counting tickets for Warner Brothers and done my styling. But we're talking 1979. You know, these laptops and all that stuff was not available then.
Yeah.
And so, you kind of now if you decide, I'm going to go move here, I'm going to go do this, vacation or living, whatever, there's so much research you can do.
Yeah.
And whereas back then, all I knew was the Hollywood sign and, that from looking at magazines. And so, the exploration of it was much more innocent and, you had to physically go there. So
Yeah.
yes, I was interested in the film industry. I've always liked to write, so I didn't know whether maybe it would be in a writing capacity, maybe it would be, behind the scenes. I wasn't sure. And, at 19, I didn't know a single soul here. I'd had a long-standing, even at 19, boyfriend in England, and his best friend's sister or somebody lived here. So I didn't really have anybody I was coming to. And I had saved some money. I bought an orange car, go figure. Um, and my
That's
very
very surprising. That's the most
I
surprising
know,
thing you've
I
told
know,
me
I
ever.
know. It was probably cheap because it was such a horrible color.
Yeah,
But
right.
and and then I landed up on the back lots of 20th Century Fox and MGM in their prop rooms and in their wardrobe,
Mm,
and it was just magic. It was
mm.
me. I just felt, I had as a young girl, kind of a fascination for Marilyn Monroe and all of that. So, um, yeah, I wasn't really sure where I would land up, how I would land up, but and I didn't really. I mean, I've been here 40 years now, so that particularly, when you're 19, you don't really think that far out.
No, totally. I mean, I resonate. I got on a plane when I was 19 too to the
Oh, there
UK.
you go.
Yeah, yeah. And then I went back and did university and then came straight back to the UK
Right.
to London. And yeah, it's such a weird thing and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I've lived my whole adult life
Yeah,
somewhere else. So,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I always struggle with like, where is home? And I
I
suppose like England's
know.
kind of ends. Do you struggle with that? Does it
I
ever
do.
get clearer?
I
Yeah.
do. And I'm surprised because when I decided to put some footing back in England, not that I'd ever been
Mm.
in the country, but still in the countryside, but so living in the countryside is a new experience for me. But when I
That's
decided,
so funny because it's like, it's just so your brand.
no, no, I know, I know. My experience in Texas actually kind of took me to the countryside in a weird way, and that's what I wanted to do when I came to Somerset. But um, yeah, and so the first 3 years that I was in Somerset, I was so busy looking for a house, finding a house eventually, doing the house up, building my business there, which wasn't really my plan, but it just kind of happened, and it's quite a lot right now. Um, so I've been very busy for 3 years, and then so LA was like it was never this long distance memory because it was 40 years, and I still have a business here, and I have a daughter here, and I have 40-year friendships here. So it wasn't like, oh, that chapter's closed. But I was just so busy on this new life. And then there was a pause of like, oh, where are my old friends? And oh, I think my company in America needs me. So there's been this bit of a pivot, and now I'm really confused. I don't know where I'm going to be. I have
Oh,
no
great.
idea.
So you basically have no advice for me at all, and I have no advice for you.
Well, the only advice I give myself, and I think it's a good one, I have a son in England, a daughter here, business in both, a home in both. Is people say, do you miss this? Do you miss that? Da, 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 da. And I'm really pretty good at being present where I am because that would be really
Yeah.
pointless, like being in LA and thinking, oh my God, I miss my English house and vice versa. Obviously, my kids and my dog I miss wherever I'm not. But other than that, I sink into
Where you are.
yeah, I mean, I would
Yeah.
say the only thing that has risen since I've been in LA that like what I miss about Somerset are what I find, the polite little drivers down those English country lanes. Yes.
That's so true. Everyone is
Yeah,
very polite, very
yeah,
polite.
very polite, and they're just so charming, even though there's a lot of chaos with tractors and horses and the little narrow lanes. Whereas here in LA, I mean, I think I've seen in the short time I'm here like four fatal crashes, the highways,
Oh
horns
my
honking,
God.
aggression. It's like, guys, slow
It's
down.
so different, isn't it?
Yeah,
I know.
yeah,
Well, I was in London for like 13 years, and then we were trying to work out, do we go to Australia? Where do we end up? What are we doing?
yeah.
And then it felt like we were like picked up and put in Glastonbury. Like it was like I
Uh,
didn't even have a choice about it. It just like happened.
interesting. Yeah,
And I had been coming to Glastonbury. I know you came over to our place
yeah.
recently, and then we went to the White Spring and the Red Spring and all of that. So I knew Glastonbury as like a town, sacred
Uh-huh.
healing town. Loved it. Used to come here on my own, but never in a million years thought I'd live here. And we ended up finding this place. It was this cute little, which is how I know Pearl
Yeah,
Lowe, our
yeah,
mutual friend,
yeah.
and yeah, but I knew about Pearl through you because I followed you on Instagram and I saw you were doing a
Ah,
book. Yeah, so it's
okay.
very interesting. But yeah, so moved here. And I didn't even know what Somerset was. Not
That's a
growing up
count.
here. And I'm
Oh,
like, oh my God, it's this incredible,
yeah,
incredible place. So
yeah.
what drew you to Somerset? Did you know where you were going or did it just happen?
No, I mean, I had a bit of a criteria. I mean, I'm single. So, there are certain things that I felt I needed to consider. Um, because obviously living in the country can also be quite lonely. Um,
Mm,
so I knew I wanted to live in the countryside. I'd heard about the Cotswolds, I heard about Somerset, whatever. I knew Pearl, she's compared to my 40-year friendships, she's a newer friend, but I'd still known her for multiple years. And then my other friend, sadly, she passed away, but Christina Strutt from Cabbages and Roses. So I had these two anchor friends. And I also didn't want to be too far from London. Obviously, as you well know, it's a 1 hour and 20 minutes on the train. That felt really good. So, the journey of specifically where to be. Did I want a little tiny house? Did I want a bigger house? Did I want to be in the middle of nowhere? Did I want to be in a village? Did I want an old house, a new house? So that was a 3-year journey in the middle of COVID. So that took me a minute to work out what was best. But again, just I find what worked for me is just having those two anchor people that were very
mm.
generous with sharing socially people with me and obviously their life. So that's all it took. And now I have, quite a lovely network of people in Somerset. But it is interesting because I have a lot of guests come to stay. I mean, this summer I think I counted 20 different guests staying with me, which I love. It's nice. Um, but I think they were all expecting that, I would be having this very quiet life and lots of time for tea and knitting. And and as you know, I mean, and I know obviously you've got young kids, which right there is a
Yeah.
time consummation, which I don't have. But oh my God, it's just so busy there. So busy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. And I suppose you've also got a business on top of that. So,
But well, and the business is one that's where my final challenge is. I'm sure you have this experience with Australia and whatever, is, like here, being in LA, my phone calls start at 6 in the morning.
hmm.
Because the time difference. When I'm in England, I'm on the phone till 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
dealing with these global things takes a lot of
Mm.
self-discipline and boundaries to not just
Yes.
around 24/7.
So,
So
so true.
yeah, so I didn't expect to be this busy. I thought LA would kind of start to hum, and I thought England wouldn't have much, but neither has happened. So
Yeah. It's kind of
I,
the realities of global business, isn't it? It's like,
yeah, so
yeah,
I have to do a
yeah.
better job at that because, like in England for many months there, I never, ever, ever made a dinner plan because I just thought, well, I've got to be on the phone in the evenings.
Right. Yeah. And then
So,
you work
yeah,
for your business again. Yeah,
and that,
yeah.
what's the point of that? So I'm trying to do a better job at that. But, it all goes back to having the support. Obviously, there's a financial consideration of paying people. And Somerset, I do find a little bit more challenging to find people. Um, but still, that's my takeaway, having spent 3 years kind of building up my life there, but realizing I'm not ready to shut shop in LA, is how do I get the support that I need so that all this abundance, these beautiful homes and beautiful business opportunities and kids in both places and dogs and walks and oceans,
Mm.
I can enjoy them all. It's like
Mm.
an abundance.
Well, Rachel, I just got off before talking to you to my friend Eliza Kelly. We did a podcast on the astrology of 2025, and she was talking about
Ah,
how there's so many new planets in new placements that this is the year to do new beginnings, like as in like
hmm.
look at new ways of living, of doing the things you've always done. So I think that's a perfect
Mm-hmm.
thing to dream into, and
Yeah,
we can call that
sure.
in for you as well.
Yeah.
I'm feeling that for myself. Just it does feel like the year to shift things up.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so I think it
Yes.
is possible.
Yes. Are you going back to Australia for the holidays?
No, this is like the first year that, well, I mean, as you know, my kids are young, and so over the past like 5 years, I've had 2 of those years I've had babies, like
Yeah.
newborns, and then the other years I've been in Australia. So this is
Hmm.
the first year where I'm not having a baby and not
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
get traveling on the other side of the world with them, which feels decadent, to be honest. I can't wait. And now
Those
we're
family
trying to,
coming to you? It's your family coming to
no,
you?
not this time, not this
Ah,
time. We're trying to work it so they come at the summer to Miss Australia winter, but then now Sunny's started school. It's like more complex because we've
yeah.
got the school system, and so ideally we'd be going in December to Australia for a couple
Yes.
months. But then if I try and make business work with that, no one wants to do events in the summer in
Yeah.
Australia because
Yeah.
everyone goes on holiday. So it's like, oh God. And then we have, as you know, we're coming to LA in April for Sunny school holidays because we've also got family in California. So
Uh-huh.
we're
Oh
just
my.
adding more
How long will you be here
complication.
for? How long will you be here for?
I think 3 to 4 weeks.
Oh, because I might be back here then.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I think last time we spoke you
Yeah.
thought you were when we
Yeah.
haven't booked yet, but I'll let you know.
Yeah,
But
do.
yeah, so that's ahead of us. Okay, so just to wrap things up then, I want to ask you two questions. One, first of all, you mentioned that you have anxiety, which I know so many of us do.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any things that like have helped you, like any tools that you go to that really support you?
Yeah, this has been honestly a very big focus for me, this trip
Mm.
over the
Mm.
last 6 weeks. Is yes, I meditate, very helpful. I know my breathing exercises, especially when it's the anxiety is becomes very physical. For me, my anxiety typically is not thoughts, it's my
Mm.
body. I can
Mm.
be in the most, and my homes, again, they're very peaceful. I mean, I wake up in my bed, it's very serene, my bedroom, and I wake up like that. So I've really been understanding, because of course, as you know, in LA, it's self-care and consciousness of being aware of your full human experience is very much on your doorstep. You know, it's much easier to seek help, advice, whatever. And so what I've really learned, you know, is that word trauma, which as we know, might doesn't need to be something massive, it can be incremental, whatever, is I've really learned that for my whole life, my choices, whether it's dysfunctional relationships, whether it's not getting support for my business, I have placed myself in anxiety situations that anyone would be anxious about. If you don't have the right partner, the right people, whatever, and you're still barreling through life, you're kind of white knuckling a lot. And so, what I've learned finally, that code is cracked, is that even if everything is okay, is my body is stuck. My body is stuck in that anxiety. Um, and so I have been speaking to various modalities of support here. I mean, I always do therapy and stuff like that. But of some additional um, uh, opportunities to do some kind of rewiring of my of how my brain works, how it absorbs just everyday life, because my life, touch wood, does not warrant the level of anxiety I feel. I'm blessed.
Mm.
I don't have masses of chaos and no one's ill and all that type of stuff. So this is very much on the foreground of my work right now. And anything I do, decisions I make, anything, I've got quite a strong filter now. Is this gonna create more anxiety? Because while I go through this journey of trying to get the anxiety that's stuck in my body, I don't want to add to it by the things. So it's so on my mother suffered from it, so you know there's some genetic things, but I don't necessarily say it's a DNA thing. I think she
Mm.
too made those same decisions
Yeah.
that stuck in her body.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing with it, because I remember we were talking when we were walking about this, and it's popped into my head a couple of times, and because the body remembers. But I think
Yeah,
the other thing is that when it's safe enough to process, we
yeah,
process it. So
yeah,
sometimes it can feel like, oh my God, like what is happening? Why is all this happening now? But that often means there's a level of safety for it
yeah,
to come up.
yeah,
And yeah, I'm like you, my mum, she is a highly creative person and always like on edge, you know.
yeah,
And like I know that this is like passed down and it's through
yeah,
behaviors, but it's also in the cells, you know.
yeah,
And it was actually after I had Sonny, well, after I gave birth to him, that like I realized how much was stored in my body, and yeah, through modalities like brain spotting, EMDR, and somatics. There's an amazing somatic body worker in just near us in Somerset who, oh my God, just like change everything for me. Just simple movements in the body to let it intelligently process what hasn't been safe to process.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I think collectively, so many of us are going through that right now. So,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it's hard to tell because even when I've been sharing this with more and more people, and they're shocked coming from me because again, they see these very peaceful homes that are
Mm,
very holistic. They walk in and the music and the whatever.
mm,
And my aura, I think, is for the most part quite peaceful. And my brand is certainly. And so when I explain what's going on inside, they're like, wow. Would never have thought that coming from you. So it's hard to know when you meet people, of course, whether they're what they're going through. Um,
it's so true. But I
mm,
also think that like creating that harmony on the external is like a way of processing it
for
too. Like
sure.
it's like,
Yeah.
you know, they say the wound brings the medicine and the
Yeah, for
gift.
sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
It's also
Oh.
I find it also interesting, this younger generation that I'm around quite a bit, probably late 20s, 30s, is largely girls, but not exclusively. They seem to have such a non-negotiable set of values and rules of wanting to be the best that they can be, and what might seem on the outside selfish to achieve that, but in actuality, if they do support themselves in whatever way is needed, they then are the best that they can be, and so then they are able to contribute to the world, other people, in their best way possible. And I'm rather in awe of these young girls, that even how that they are now raising their babies. And I realize how I was raised, to a certain degree, how I raised my children, just being asleep, just being
Mm,
asleep. And you can't rewrite history. What's done is done, and however many years left. But for me now, it's non-negotiable to not be conscious with my actions, my movements, even when I can remember my thoughts, because that gets very noisy up there. So I find this younger generation a privilege to observe and be around because I find it very expansive and inspiring. And woulda, coulda, shoulda. Wow, if I'd known some of those things,
Oh my God. Well, it's consciousness shifting, isn't it?
it's
And
conscious
yeah,
shift. And
yeah.
the world as we know is it's got a lot of explosions going on.
Right. Right.
And you know, there's just on certain areas, people just aren't going to take it anymore.
Fully. Yeah,
So it's an interesting time,
it really
but
is.
you have to step through it with grace and with peace and with calm and kindness
Mm, mm.
to just work out how all these pieces fit together.
Yeah. All right. And then one final question, which I ask everyone: what returns you to the wisdom within?
What returns me to the wisdom within? Are you talking about like my intuition and things like that?
Yeah.
Um, I find I go there when I'm not necessarily finding the answers outside of myself,
Mm.
whether it's universal barriers or opportunities or people, but when, even though I believe that if we make space, the universe does want the best for us and all that dialogue, I think you still need to check in with yourself as well.
Mm.
And so I think that's the times that when I see opportunities or I see challenges, as I sit quietly, might pull some cards, yours cards, um, and just make sure that I'm getting the message right.
Mm. Mm.
Does that make sense?
Beautiful. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. And what have you got going on at the moment? What I want to tell everyone in the UK, check out Next because you've got some beautiful things. I've got this gorgeous,
Oh, you
gorgeous.
got one of those.
Yeah, I
Lovely.
got one of these. People,
Nice.
because I've got so many different shades of rose candle holders, and everyone's
Oh,
like, "Can you make some?" And then I'm like, "No, Rachel makes them. Just get that."
oh, lovely.
So
Nice. Nice.
gorgeous. And
Yes.
I got Rachel's bed from, I can't remember where I got that one from.
Probably
House
House
of
of
Fraser,
Fraser, was it?
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Many years ago.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So what have you got coming up, and what do you
Well,
where do you want me to direct people?
well, I mean, work-wise, like you say, Next, I have a wallpaper paint line with Graham and Brown for the English audience. Um, and then, obviously my shabbychic.com in
Mm,
America, which is my labor of love. I do not make
yeah.
money on shabbychic.com, but for me to be able to have these other partnerships, which obviously are price sensitive and mass sensitive, I need as a designer to still be in the creme de la creme. So to have something to diffuse from. So shabbychic.com is the creme de la creme. And you might see a pillow, you might see a bed set or something that you then might see with one of these other programs that one way, shape, or form is just slightly diffused. So still working on that. I'll probably do a book on my home in Somerset. But I think that's really going to be, this will be my 13th book.
Oh my
And
gosh!
yeah,
Wow.
and I think it's going to be potentially my last, you never know.
Hmm.
And so I think this one's going to be the journey of that house, but also philosophically, all the lessons that I've learned metaphorically
Mm.
through life. So I think it's going to be more heavy weighted on that journey. Um, and then really, just trying to balance this double life that I have, and that's going to be taking a lot of my going for wisdom within of, because I don't like airports, I don't like travel, um, but and it's a long journey, so I have
Mm.
to work out how to make sure that that's all balanced for this, as Taylor Swift would say, for this era, you know.
Love getting a bit of Taylor in there right at the end.
Yes,
Amazing.
yes,
Oh,
yes.
well,
Did
thank
you
you
go to
so
the
much.
concert?
Yeah, no, I want to. I've never been. Need to
Oh,
go. Did
well,
you
it's
go?
over now. No, I didn't go,
Oh,
but so
oh.
I'm just so in awe of her. You know, for someone firstly that young, but talk about who understands or is able to balance the business of what she
Mm,
does and the
yes.
creative vision, and
And even her
also
music just feels like so pure. It's
it
like just
does.
her writing it. Yeah, it's so true.
I know,
So
and so
true.
it's like, how does she keep that purity in this massive
Yes.
engine, which from all accounts, she's very involved in? She's not just like, leave
Yes.
my guitar and you take care of it.
Oh, I
She's
need to find
involved
out
in
if
it.
anyone's interviewed her and asked that question because I want to know
Yeah,
that
because
answer. I think about it so much when I hear her music.
yeah, and what she's created with that tour, and
Mm,
10 million people came over the course of the tour, and
incredible.
that whole friendship bracelet, it's just all so positive, and unless I guess you're an ex-boyfriend, but other than that,
I love it. I love
yeah,
it.
I find her very fascinating.
Mm. Thank you so much for listening to Returning. As always, we have a soul inquiry prompt to reflect on. You can journal your answers or just contemplate yourself by placing your hand on your heart and listening to the wisdom within. Today's soul inquiry is: how can you create more beauty and harmony in your home today? How can you create more beauty and harmony in your home today? And as always, I invite you to think of a little baby step that you can take to act on that in the next 24 hours.